Okay, here we go. We're live again. This is our Senate Transportation Committee. We're going to, our next item is Amtrak overview, and we have some folks with us to talk about it. And we're excited about the Amtrak returning to Burlington. And our next step, we hope to get it to Montreal. So, Dan, good morning.
Good morning.
What's going on?
For the record, my name is Dan Delabriere. I'm the Rail and Aviation Bureau Director for VTrans. I've got a couple folks with me today. We have Jane Brophy from Amtrak. She's the government affairs responsible for our two state-supported services in Vermont.
Great.
And Tony Clitheroe, who manages our Amtrak contract. So they're both going to come up in a second. But just quickly, as everybody knows in the committee, we have two Amtrak trains that come in and out of Vermont every day. Amtrak Vermonter along the eastern side of the state comes up to White River and then goes up and it stops in St. Albans, and hopefully someday we'll see it continue to Montreal. And then the Amtrak Ethan Allen, which everybody knows we extended to Burlington this past summer. And they're going to give us a report on how that's doing. And then anything else you guys want to know. After that, we'll be happy to answer questions.
Sure. Great.
I'm going to turn it over to Jane Brophy from Amtrak.
You just stay there and put on the chair. Okay.
Perfect.
Morning and welcome.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us this morning. And
Thank you for
we're always
having me.
excited to hear about Amtrak. We're big fans of Amtrak, and we're just we're glad that someday I got to get an explanation of why we can't get to Montreal. That's another subject.
I think we need more time for that.
Yes, I
At
think
the end
we
of
go
the
that
day.
track. Yeah.
But-
We're ready. Tell us about you. Who you
So
are.
my name is Jane Brophy. I serve as Amtrak's Director of Government Affairs for the Northeast on the state and local level.
Great.
I've been with Amtrak for 13 years, and in this role, almost 2 years. Prior to working in government affairs, I worked in the Amtrak Coast Railroad Group. So I have a long, productive working relationship with the state's freight carriers on whose tracks much of the state-supported Amtrak service operates. And in fact, last night, you may have heard my ABA stations colleague and I presented our final plan for the Brattleboro station to the select board and got a 5-0 vote for our documents. So we're ready to break ground there. We're super excited about that.
Where's this in
The
Brattleboro?
Brattleboro, it'll be the first high-level platform in your state.
Wow.
So that means folks will be able to roll on and roll off the train.
Great. Wonderful.
So thank you for inviting me today. We're very proud of the work that we've done with the state, and our continued partnership will ensure those traveling in the state will have greater access to safe, convenient, sustainable train travel. So as Dan mentioned, the Ethan Allen Express operates from New York City to Burlington via Albany, and of course the Vermonters from DC to St. Albans. But these services are across state, as you might know, meaning that the costs and the operating decisions are shared under the provisions of the 2008 Passenger Rail Improvement and Investment Act, Section 209. So that's what we refer to as PREA 209. And under this provision, Amtrak receives funding from 17 states through 20 agencies to support the 28 routes in our network that cover less than 750 miles. So,
Amtrak covers how many states?
well, the state-supported service is 28 routes.
28.
So PREA 209 requires Amtrak and its state partners to jointly develop a single nationwide and standardized cost-sharing methodology for state-supported intercity passenger rail service. So continued operation every year of your routes is subject to annual operating agreements and state legislative appropriations. So in the case of the Vermonter, while the train bears your state's name, the funding comes from Vermont, but also Connecticut and Massachusetts. And so in addition, the Vermonter operates over the Northeast corridor between New Haven and Washington, D.C., and similarly, the Ethan Allen Express relies on both New York and Vermont for its funding. So given the impact of COVID-19, the Vermonter was suspended north of New Haven in late March 2020, and this suspension lasted about 16 months. Service was restored on both services July 19th, 2021. So in fiscal year 2019, the last full year before the pandemic, the Vermonter carried just under 100,000 people. And in fiscal year 2022, the train carried 87,282. So that's 91% of pre-pandemic ridership levels and actually represents a larger recovery than the corresponding figure for all of Amtrak's national system. So great for Vermonters. Last year's extension of the Ethan Allen Express to Burlington Union Station was, as you all know, the result of a combined multi-year effort by the legislator, the Vermont Agency of Transportation, and Amtrak, and has been very, very successful. And we are now serving the 3 new communities in the state: Middlebury, Virgins, Harrisburg, and Burlington. The ridership on both the Ethan Allen Express and the Vermonter for the first quarter of the fiscal year 23, which for Amtrak is September through December, we're exceeding the first quarter levels of FY19. So that's a great trend we hope to see continue throughout the year.
Good.
So future service extensions impacting the state are contemplated in Vermont's rail plan as published on May 7th, 2021. And our role as a service partner and your operational carrier in the state is to support and facilitate opportunities for the state to reach the full implementation of that rail plan. So Amtrak's government affairs role involves review of those state plans often, and we help provide technical expertise and framework for those project goals. And as such, we participate actively in the Vermont Rail Council meetings. And these opportunities are great to interact and explain our current conditions, our legal and fiscal mandates, and how our corporate goals can be leveraged at the state level. And this is vital for you folks to realize the rail plan objectives. And so as we have all been talking, everybody wants to expand the Vermonter into Montreal. It's been a long-term goal for everyone. And in fact, several, I guess 5 years ago, 6 years ago, the legislation was passed in both the US and Canada to allow for pre-clearance facilities to be constructed. So we've been working with multiple agencies across both countries on the designs and the implementations, to get the pre-clearance facility up and running. It's not necessarily a precursor to start a train, but it's, a big piece of what we want to have happen there. So the federal funding opportunities for specific project activities, particularly those administered under the Federal Railroad and Rail Administration, require inclusion in the state rail plan. So under the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, or the IIJA, the FRA Corridor ID program provides eligible entities, such as the agency, to apply for grant monies to study new corridors or expansions of existing routes. So we wholeheartedly support the agency's efforts as outlined in the rail plan. I'd like to talk briefly about food service. In May 2020, Amtrak convened a food and beverage working group. This was a requirement under the IIJA Jobs Act. Congress charged the group with developing recommendations to improve Amtrak's onboard food and beverage service. So consistent with that requirement, the group consists of representatives from Amtrak, labor organizations representing the employees who prepare and provide the onboard food and beverage service, nonprofit agent organizations representing Amtrak passengers, and states that fund Amtrak service. So the team meets monthly, and they formed 3 subgroups which meet more often. In fact, they just gathered in Chicago for a 2-day summit, which included a tour of commissary and mechanical facilities. So this group will prepare a report to Congress, which is due May 11th, 2023. And then Amtrak will have 180 days to review and respond to the group's recommendations. And so this will provide any future framework for major revisions to our food and beverage services and our commissary facilities. So right now, our 2 East Coast commissary facilities are in New York City and Washington, D.C. There's a House bill in play, and there's some language in there about using a cabbage car on the Ethan Allen, which is a F40 non-powered control unit. We do use these cab units in other parts of the country, but we are not able to use that in Vermont because it's operationally impossible due to its size. It does not fit within the clearance envelope that we need to have from New York up. We also don't have any infrastructure in Burlington to turn the train. So those 2 issues are why we cannot put a cabbage car on the Ethan Allen Express.
What do they call it? Cabbage?
Cabbage
What
is
is
a
it?
cab unit. It's a
So basically what that is they take an old locomotive and they take the actual engine out of it. So all the power that used to control the that train comes from the other end, because now the cab car is on the front, at the head end, they call it the head end. So there's no real power on that end. All the power is coming from the other end. But all these motors underneath, how the train works is electric motors underneath, right? And the big diesel part that you hear in a locomotive, that's just a big generator generating electricity, which goes down to the electric motor. So a cab car basically gets the power from the diesel part that's on the opposite end, the tail end of the
So what
train.
does it do? What's
It
the
allows
purpose?
you
You don't
to
have to
run
turn
your
the
train, you don't have to turn the train around at night to go the opposite
I see.
direction.
So you don't have to have
Push,
two
pull.
locomotives on either end.
So for now, the Ethan Allen has to have 2 locomotives so that we can run up and run down.
And there's legislation to require?
So the House has introduced a bill to,
Which is why,
yeah,
We're
so that,
talking about Congress.
no,
No.
no,
We're talking about our house?
yeah, they introduced a bill that, you know, we've made comments on, but anyway.
What does it do to comply?
So there's like 4 things in the bill. One is they were asking us to put a cab car on the Ethan Allen. They want us to look at the food service on our both our trains. And
Who sponsored the bill?
well, I don't want to get into that. You can read the bill, but and I don't see if
No,
it
I
comes
just want to
over.
know who the lead sponsor was. I'll have to look it
I
up.
think Representative Burke was one of them.
I don't even know what a cabbage car is.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what a cabbage
No,
car
no.
is?
now you do.
Probably was St. Patrick Day deal.
I thought it was a food beverage thing, yeah, yeah.
Corned beef
So,
and cabbage?
Yeah, there we go.
The good news on all of that is that there's new rolling stock on order. And when that rolling stock comes in new train sets, they will have the type of equipment that will allow us to do exactly what the cab car will
Well, that's
do.
where the Amtrak's replacing all the trains nationwide, like in the.
Yes. Yes. So, but until that equipment is ready, which will be several years out, we're gonna have to stick with the current car and consist arrangement on those 2 services.
There was a reason why we did what we did when we started the train to Burlington. I mean, it's we looked at all the options at the
We
time.
can't get involved in the operation of the train. I mean, that's.
Well, and that's the other-
Our jurisdiction.
That's the other thing, is it's tough to do.
Yeah, we can't.
Dan, is it just the engines that have power, as far as to the wheels, just the engines, the
Yeah.
cars don't?
No,
Okay.
the cars are not powered.
Just doing a butt cover.
Yeah.
Totally different operation.
Oh,
Yeah.
You want me to drag the Canadian to that?
Thank you.
Okay.
And the only other thing I wanted to point out is one of the other issues in play is we use multiple channels to share our information and allow passengers to do their ticketing. And so our corporate website is one channel, amtrak.com. We have a national call center in Philadelphia. And obviously we have a mobile application and that all provides up-to-date information. So the IIJ funding has given Amtrak an opportunity to advance several technology upgrades across the company, including the website. And next week, we are deploying some new changes in how the station selections load on the website. So I think that will be a great benefit because Burlington Union Station will be the first pick. So that those changes to our customer-facing assets should improve the overall ticketing experience. So in closing, I just want to say it's a very exciting time for Amtrak and passenger rail in the United States, and we look forward to continuing our working relationship with the states to leverage our federal programs to build stronger passenger rail service in Vermont.
We are so appreciative because Amtrak has been something I think this committee has endorsed for a long time. And it's been very, back when Howard Dean was governor, we started on this project. And at one time it called ridiculous and all of this stuff. And so I'm so glad they're coming into Burlington now. And I talked to many people who said the experience is fantastic. The service is good. It's a good way to get to New York City and, or all the way down to the line where you want to stop. It's reasonable. That's the other thing I hear. Yes, Mr. President.
2 things since you brought up food service. I have a couple constituents that they know I'm a big proponent of the train, so they tell me that the coffee is bad. That's their only complaint. They're like, can you get better
Everybody
coffee?
likes different green
I
coffee.
mean, JJ wants to give it away free on the.
You don't want to tax it?
No, that's his
Oh,
one.
oh, free.
Free on the
Okay.
coffee.
Well, if that's the complaint, that's the easy one.
But I'm just passing that along. We don't need to talk about
Green
it.
Mountain Coffee or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody has an idea about what we should
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
But see, the challenge is, as Jane was saying, we have commissaries, Amtrak has
Yeah.
commissaries in certain locations, right? So any food that goes onto those trains goes there first. Then it gets distributed on the train,
Yeah,
to every, not just that train, to other trains, because that's the
Is
central
the food
location.
all prepared in advance on the trains?
Well, yeah,
food.
it's pretty fast food type.
It's sort
It's
of like
not.
airline food,
It's
all
similar, yeah. That's the.
Yeah.
No, I mean, the old days of
They can't
actually of having.
We don't have like an open grill that on the train that you can
No.
get custom orders. No, it's,
No.
you have a specific menu.
And linen
And you can pick.
tablecloths and.
That's on the,
Yeah,
we're trying to bring back some of those amenities on the long distance trains, but these are all state supported trains. So we have 3 sort of business lines at Amtrak,
And we're,
your state supported services.
we are happy with Amtrak. Is
We're-
Amtrak happy with us
where were the prepared food?
in ridership and everything?
Yes,
Microwave.
I think that we would prefer not to see things in the bill.
Yeah, well,
The House bill.
we'll review that closely when it comes over here.
Yeah.
Let me ask, do we even have any jurisdiction as
No,
to
That's what I said.
these issues as it relates to Amtrak?
We can't.
that's one of the problems with the bill.
Yeah.
There's certain things that we just don't have control over or authority to control.
That's not even under our,
So,
One thing that I think we have control of in one year, how this would happen or what Amtrak's response is to have a second trip, which I know other people have brought up before. And it was in the plan at some point to have a second Vermonter, which would also help people like, even though it's an interstate passenger service, but somebody from Burlington could take it to Brattleboro if there was another train going back the other way the same day. But also, I don't know what would have to happen from Amtrak's or the state's point of view for that to work. Would it have to be so full in the one that you would have to do it, or is it just a question of putting the money forward for a second line?
yeah, so it's all about demand and money, right? So being fiscally responsible. Adding another train, I'm sure if we asked Amtrak to give us another train, somehow, some way, we'd figure that out. But you gotta remember, there's more than just Vermont, right? So we have partners like from New Haven South, we're running on a line that Amtrak owns. From New Haven North, then we gotta deal with Connecticut, and then we gotta deal with Mass. So we're not the only partner in this decision.
Right.
And
And all the railroad owners from here to there.
yeah, I mean, there's that, right? There's a lot to it, so it's pretty complicated.
They're afraid. and everything.
But if you just focus on the money, it costs us right now. We have all these other partners. If you just take the Vermonter, for instance, I'm going to estimate. It costs us about $6 million. That's Vermont's portion. That's what we pay.
We pay more for the Vermonter than the Ethel,
We do.
just because there's more miles.
We have more miles. We have more miles. There's more stations that we pay for. There's just a lot more to the Vermonter in Vermont than there is even now. So, just the cost alone, would Mass and Connecticut pay their share of a second service? We don't know. If they say no, then our bill goes up. It's more than 6 million. So just looking at the cost on it, the return on the investment right now would have to really be looked at
So
first.
it's mainly the cost, like Amtrak wouldn't have a problem, if you have a train, I guess.
Oh, that's a good,
Staff.
equipment is a big issue, right? We don't have a lot of equipment to just start running new schedules.
So 6 million for less than 100,000 people right now of ridership.
Well, that's what we're running averaging about 100,000 a year. So for the Vermonter, right? So, and we'll get in, I don't want to steal Tony's show because she's going to start getting into the numbers.
Well, we can get off topic.
any other questions or comments? For that?
The state, from our perspective, we have a very good relationship with Amtrak.
You know, I thought we always did. I always recall it many times you've been in here. It's always been a good relationship. That's what's so positive about it. People, it's exciting. It's exciting.
So the trains go into Penn Station, is that where they go?
Yeah,
Into
Moynihan,
New York
Moynihan, Penn Station's all one complex.
Yeah. Yes. Both
Too
trains,
bad that
both trains.
station
over.
got torn down. Really, I mean,
Both stations.
Penn Station in New York City.
Yeah.
It was back when Irving.
The old
Should
one.
have taken it last week, so we can all set.
The old Penn Station, it's still called, it's called Moynihan.
Yeah.
Penn Station.
I remember being there
It's nice, the new.
in the
station,
early
yeah.
sixties and underneath, and it was really. it
They're
was
working,
sad.
we're working on that.
Yeah.
You wouldn't recognize it now. We're working on Penn Station as well as, of course, the new train hall is wonderful.
That's
Well,
our-
thank you, Jane, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Yeah.
Okay, next, Tony. Welcome.
Hi there.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. So let me see if I can share my screen.
Okay,
Before I get, will you have the person about the pedestrian bridge send their presentation so you can have it online?
You're not there yet. Mike, does she have permission?
What's your name?
Yeah, he said I
Okay.
There you go.
It's a silent I. L.
Double L like in Lloyd.
Okay,
Okay,
there's
good.
that
So we're all set.
what was that?
Looks like a.
Go to slideshow.
Oh.
Where's that? Dan, where is that line right there? Just doesn't.
Where's that picture taken?
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't take that picture.
It doesn't even look like a, like an Amtrak line because it's,
That's before we probably did the NECR.
Yeah.
I think that's the Ethan Allen maybe coming in near Clarendon.
I don't know.
Well,
Yeah.
that's
We'll
still
straighten that.
Yeah, you don't recognize those?
I don't recognize that exact line.
I don't know why I can't even imagine why you would.
Okay, go right
Go
ahead.
to slideshow because you're not presenting
Okay,
the
so
slide.
let's see, where's that little thing down here? There we go.
There we go.
All right, so just to recap, our ridership in fiscal year '22, total ridership for both trains was about 150,000. That is way up from the 30,000 that we had in fiscal year '21. Of course, that was a partial year. We
Wow.
didn't restart service until July 19th of 2021. But anyway, so I'm here to share the good news. The routes are performing very well. So this is a slide that shows basically the monthly trends of the of ridership, and this is for the Vermonter. And the red is fiscal year 22, which is the last full year we have to report. And we're comparing against fiscal year 19 because that is also the last year that we had full 12 months of service. And as you can see, we were tracking pretty close to fiscal year 19 in the fall. At the beginning of the fiscal year, and then the kind of steep drop that you see in December, January, February, that was due to the Omicron virus. And then we recovered from that, and as you can see, we're tracking pretty much right on where we were in fiscal year 19, and
So
that
it's a
is,
decline in September. Why do we have that seasonal drop?
you know, there are seasonal drops. That's just the way that the
School
trains
starts.
are historically, you know, whether it's, you know, has
August
to
is
do with
high.
holidays and weather and everything.
Well, maybe it's better to say, why do we have increased ridership in July and August? Which then would obviously be people maybe using it for recreational or vacation.
Right. And July is really the most beautiful month in Vermont, if you ask me. But anyway.
At least it's more.
So this slide shows just the 4 months that we have so far in fiscal year 23, because I think it's important to see that this trend of increased ridership is continuing strongly into this fiscal year. And as you can see, we pretty widely exceeded in November what we did in fiscal year 19, which is really saying a lot, because fiscal year 19 was not only the last full 12 months of service, but it was actually one of our best years ever at that point. So the fact that
This
we're
is not both.
both, this is the Vermonter.
Well, this is just
This is just the Vermonter, yes.
the better one.
The one from DC,
Yeah, you see through Montpelier.
yes.
Yeah, it's the better of the two runs.
Okay.
We will not say that. We're Switzerland, we like them both.
That's right.
They're agnostic.
Now, these revenue numbers, you know, I wish I hadn't included these because these come from the same Amtrak reporting. However, the Amtrak reporting on revenues has not yet been adjusted to capture some changes, internal changes they made to their accounting system. And in going through some of these numbers in detail this morning, with our contract manager at Amtrak, it's clear that our actual revenues are tracking very close to fiscal year 19. So please don't give this slide too much concern. But you can certainly see the trends here anyway, and you can see again how in fiscal year 23 we are, you know, we've definitely made some major improvements. Go ahead, you may go back.
What's the improvements there?
Well, the improvements are that we are tracking very close to what our revenues were in fiscal year 19. Unfortunately, and I don't know how to go back.
Or
But
have fares, since adjusted for any fare increases?
We have done some fare increases, but you know, we look at those with Amtrak because they have a marketing department that says, you know, what is the.
No, but I was just looking at this, and obviously if you're comparing them, in 19 and 22, we've got a fee increase. That's going to influence your revenues, that other slide. That was all I was wondering, is if in fact there had been a fare increase between 19 and 22.
So our revenues are up based on small fare increases, but also based on ridership. So our
But it
revenue,
was lower than fiscal year 19.
the ridership number was.
So
no, the revenue number, which
You can't just hit the back there.
But you just said, don't worry, because it wasn't right anyway, so.
yeah,
delete
I
that.
wouldn't worry about it. If I had to do it over again.
She said
I
there were
wouldn't
any
include it.
modifications to it, so it's not right, so delete this.
These are, I use the same reports that come from Amtrak, but the report for fiscal year 22 does not include some changes that were made internally to Amtrak's accounting system. So those numbers don't really reflect reality, and going through and breaking down some of, it's a little complicated to figure it all out, but in going through that exercise this morning, it's pretty clear that our revenues for fiscal year 22 are actually tracking very closely to fiscal year 19, and in some cases exceeding a little bit. So
Same with the ridership.
the same,
Yeah.
so it really tracks. I mean, I think the reality is that the revenue is pretty much tracking the same way that the ridership is tracking. And to answer your question, Jane, I'm not aware of any major fare increases. As you know, probably been running a lot of fare promotions. We've been doing a lot of marketing, and I think it's paying off. So this is our other train. Economic Express.
The other-
Trying to.
Yes, and this is the little engine that could. This train is just performing gangbusters. So as you all know, on July 29th of 2022, we launched the extension to Burlington, Middlebury, and Ferrisburg, Virgins. And you can see, following the blue line for fiscal year 20 or 22 on this chart, you can see how we've almost doubled ridership. And this is just beginning with the new service. And so I also included the first 4 months of fiscal year 23, and you can see that this is continuing. The new stops in Burlington in particular, but also Middlebury and Virgins, are definitely helping grow ridership in a significant way. And this train was always performing traditionally at about half, I'd say, of the Vermonter, just as a rough example, but this train looks like it's going to inch its way up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Burlington.
Yes, so it's really been a major success story.
Does it work? So people, I know going through Rutland, a lot of skiers come up on the train.
Yeah.
What time would it get from New York City back into Rutland to go to Killington?
Right, well, it leaves, I think it's 2:21 p.m. is when it leaves.
New York City?
No, I'm talking about on the way back, I'm
Oh.
sorry. I think it gets back into New York. Again, I'm gonna get all twisted right now. I think it leaves New York at 2:21, it gets into Burlington at 9:55.
That's right.
So it get into Rutland in the ski areas then at a fairly decent time?
Yes. Yes, unfortunately, we don't have the Grant shuttle anymore, and that's something that's a real tragedy because we used to have Amtrak through service that would take skiers to Killington directly from Rutland. But unfortunately, since COVID, we haven't been able to bring that back. So that's really it. I don't want to linger on this because it's also got, it's got the same report, but it's doesn't include some changes to the accounting system. But as far as trends go, you can see that that the Ethan Allen is doing very well.
Well, that's good. I'd like to hear that.
Yes.
Great.
No, it's very exciting. It really is.
The train stays overnight. You found a place in Burlington to have it stay overnight, right?
Yeah.
Go down the track a little bit.
A great solution.
Right in the yard,
Yeah.
That's a good place.
right in the yard, yeah, we put the charging station there, and it's right in the yard. So yeah, it's not in front of the station. That was one of the options.
Can the Vermonter turn around when it gets to Essex, or is it the same issue with the?
Turns in St. Albans.
Oh, right.
They have what's called a Y. So basically it goes up one leg of the Y, turns it backs in and then comes back
They
down.
only have one.
So
Yes.
they have one locomotive, well, in the winter months, we have 2 locomotives for reliability. In the cold months, in case one goes down, we don't want to strand our passengers, but we only need 1 for power as long as it's working right, so. Yeah, it's always on the head end. We don't put power on the tail end, right? It's always on the head end.
Another reason why it's better.
Well, at least
They
you don't,
both can be good.
at least you don't get stranded at the airport for 3 days or 2 days. At least it's,
And you're right downtown. That's the thing. By the time you
yeah.
get from the airport in to JFK or LaGuardia, I mean, it takes quite a bit of time. And then you have such a long delay at the airport. So it's just really convenient.
It's beautiful too. I mean, that Union Station, the location is just exquisite.
Well, we only made it as far as Virgins.
Yeah, we.
But it was pretty, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah, it was very nice, but we got the boot at that point.
Well,
Can't have everything.
someday we're gonna find out about Canada. We've talked about it for so
Yeah, I
many
was
years.
surprised we haven't talked about it yet. We
Yeah,
haven't
I
talked
know.
about Amtrak.
We're gonna get an update someday, some folks about what the real reason. We've heard all kinds of things about it, but it's Canadian. but-
Well, pre-clearance is really sweet, though, I can
Yeah,
tell you.
yeah,
It's,
It's the key to getting the Vermonter there. Without pre-clearance, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
How many, I wonder, how many, you said out west, they do have pre-clearance.
Yes.
Yes, I took the
In
train
Cascades.
from Seattle to Vancouver, and I didn't just.
I know you go through, well, actually you go through security though, and when you're taking the train from London to Paris, that was more
Right.
security, I think. Probably they don't want any risk of, you can imagine if a terrorist got on that train in the tunnel.
How far can you go? Took Amtrak from Burlington, how far?
Where do you want to go?
To the Pacific.
GC is
How many-
DC or,
The Vermonter goes from St. Albans all the way, you don't have to get off, all the way down to DC. Is that what your question?
Yeah, but then you have to get off the train to keep.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
a lot of people will transition in New York Station, right? So once you get to New York, you can kind of go anywhere. You can go east-west. It doesn't always connect maybe exactly the way you want, but
the train that you're riding when you get off to DC is the same train that comes back. It's not like.
Yes.
Right, that exact train is going back.
well, they share equipment in the pool, but it's that, yeah. I mean, it may not be you may not sit in the exact same seat as you did on the way down on the way back, but
How many folks does it take to run the train? Is it one crew? One crew. How many?
how many people are on your train? How many employees are the Vermonter
There's
say?
no more moves or anything these days.
No,
you know?
no.
So there's just one person that runs the engine or two.
Because there's,
There's one
The engineer.
Engine on both sides.
conductor, assistant conductor, and then
On board service.
LSA.
Are there a conductor on each end? Or they don't go once, because you have train, you have engines on both ends.
Well,
So when it's going this way,
They don't have to
There's
ride.
nobody in the tail.
Okay.
There's nobody in the tail end.
okay.
They're up front.
So there's a couple, I'm sure.
Yeah, you gotta have more, you can't have just that one engineer.
Depends on the number of cars on the train.
Really?
Actually have then you show your tickets before you can board, is that right?
Generally, you get on and the conductor comes down through, checks your tickets, generally on your phone now, right?
Okay,
Next day.
they check. You know, interesting, took a train from Orvieto down to Rome. No one ever checked our tickets. We could
Oh,
have
really?
for free, I guess, but, so I was just wondering, so it's all on board then?
Yeah, typically it's on board, and they put a little thing sticking right above your seat, and basically says you get checked.
When I've been in Seattle, it costs to ride their public transportation, but they don't chip. Because it takes too much time and money but enough people pay, so they said every once in a while there's like a random
Oh,
check.
oh,
So we could do that with our fare-free discussion.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll help out on that other thing you're talking about.
Yeah, yeah. Take care of that.
what, the other bill?
House.
That's good to see the light of day, but,
Nice to meet another Jane.
oh. And you're based in
Philadelphia.
Philadelphia? Oh,
We have,
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank you
coming.
very much.
Train back home?
It doesn't go to my place, yes, sir.
The,